So, let me make sure that I understand correctly here. You can throw a fireball for 100 meters and take out 10 meters from the point of impact. And you can do this for the price of some bat guano. Do I understand this correctly? That's how a fireball works, yep. Okay. How are you not the king? Hello, fellow world builder, and welcome to another episode of Just in Time Worlds. Today, I would like to discuss how magic impacts your government in a fantasy world. So, how I'm going to do this is I'm going to discuss first the world of Midkemia versus the world of the Empire of Tsurani. They're brought to us by the same author, by Raymond E. Feist, and give us a great view of how different magic systems can affect your government in different ways. Then I'm going to take that comparison and I'm going to build it out into a model that shows us how we can measure what impact a magic system will probably have on the governance of a world. Then I'm going to discuss some specific examples, looking at authors who have magic systems and how they handle the impact of magic in their worlds. And lastly, I will give you 4 strategies for handling magic and its impact on government in a fantasy world. Okay, let's get cracking. So, the world of Midkemia, and I'm now speaking about Midkemia at the point where magician is written. The world of Midkemia is one of low magic. The magic is quite low powered. It's uncertain whether it always comes off, but the cost is quite low as well. So it's a low cost magic with a low cost payoff. And about 20% of the population have got access to magic. These are very rough numbers based on my reading of Midkemia, of Raymond E. Feist's world, so don't take my absolute word for it. So, judging by those things, we can see that in Midkemia, the impact of magic is actually quite low. Now, the reason why the impact of magic is quite low is because, as I said, it has a very low payoff. And that payoff means that magicians are held in low regard. They're seen as charlatans, which we pick up right at the beginning of Magician, because Duke Boric is regarded as an oddity amongst nobles because he has a magician as an advisor. And that is the highest that a magician would rank, would be the advisor to a duke. Now, on the other side of that coin, the Empire of Tsurani, which invade Midkemia through the rift between the two worlds, is actually a very different world, where magic has a very high payoff for about the same cost as the Midkemian magicians pay, and about the same number of people have access to magic. But because the payoff is so much higher, the world of the Empire of Tsurani has got a very different impact on their government. What happens there is mages are seen as outside of the law. They can literally do anything that they want, right? They can free slaves. They can do things that are completely against the law, and it is their will, and that is just the way it is. End of story. And that's because, like, everything else is more or less the same. The difference is the payoff, which brings us to a generalized discussion of how you can measure the impact of magic. So, payoff makes a huge difference. If your magic is, I can make myself stronger, it has an impact on your general day-to-day activities, but it probably doesn't help you overthrow a government. It probably doesn't help you take control of large people. So if your payoff is smaller, if it's more personalized, your impact on your government is going to be less. The bigger your payoff, the more flashy your payoff, the higher your impact on government is going to be. Then cost. Okay, if your cost is very high, like it takes you half your life force every time you cast a spell, yeah, so you're probably never going to be able to cast enough spells to keep control of large bodies of people. So your impact on government is going to reduce the higher your cost is, right? I mean, that just makes sense. And then lastly, how common your magic is. So if everyone has magic, no one has magic. Okay, it's that simple. If magic is very common in your world and everybody has access to it, then it's just another talent, right? It has minimal impact. If very few people have access, like you can count the number of mages on one hand, then the impact of magic is extremely variable because it stops being about groups and statistics and people being ambitious. If you put 10 people together, one of them is going to be ambitious enough to try and overthrow the government. And it becomes exclusively about those people and their personal goals, their personal ambitions, and the things that drive them. So your model changes completely, right? If at very low numbers of mages or very high numbers of mages, the model really has very minimal impact because it has very, very different impacts on your government. But in that Goldilocks zone of about 20% of people, there you balance your payoff and your cost to see what your impact is on government. So if we take a look at those and we take some examples from authors, we'll start with Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy. Now, Brandon Sanderson is undoubtedly one of the best world builders when it comes to magic. And you can see it so clearly in Mistborn. The magical system is gorgeous there. Now, there you have a high payoff for a medium cost, and it's about 20% of people who have access to it. And it's resulted in exactly what it should, which is the Mistborn are the nobles. They are the government. And in fact, in those books, Sanderson explores what happens when people start losing magic. And of course, what happens is they start losing political power. Because if your political power is predicated on your magic and you start losing your magic, you will lose your political power as well. And if you can hear that sound in the background, I am so sorry. My cat has decided that he wants to come and entertain himself. So I'm sorry. Then let's move on to George R.R. Martin and A Song of Ice and Fire. So I've heard a lot of arguments that A Song of Ice and Fire is a low fantasy setting. And I actually really disagree. So it's not that magic doesn't have a high payoff. Okay? Dana Race kills one witch and gets 3 dragons. Brandon Stark turns into this future-seeing, past-seeing wizard who can move through the tree network. These are not small effects. They are huge effects. But the cost is excessively high. And it is very few people who have access to it. If you think about what Melisandre can achieve with her Shadow Assassin, she can kill anyone if someone's willing to pay the cost involved in creating such a Shadow Assassin. And so there you can really see the effect of having very few people have access to magic, right? Those individuals who have access to magic, boy, do they have an impact. The world trembles at their footsteps. They fundamentally change everything, right? So that's your very low amount of people with high cost and high impact magic. Then if we take a look at, say, Jim Butcher and the Dresden Files. Now here, again, you've got a reasonably high payoff for a medium cost, and about 20% of people have it. But instead of allowing it to have an impact on his real-world government, what happens is he has a secret magocracy, like a council ruled by magic, but one that has sworn not to interfere in real-world politics. And that's a trope that you can use to control magic that I'll talk a little bit more about when I get to the strategies. The last series that I want to highlight is the Dark Sword trilogy. Now, this was written by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman way back in the 80s. And in it, they actually used the everyone has magic, so no one has magic, right? Literally everyone had magic, except the main character, Joram, who was born without magic. He was born dead, as they termed it. And so they employed a reverse trope where your main character was the fish out of water who didn't have magic. And it is an absolutely fascinating trilogy of books that I highly recommend if you want to go take a look at magic systems with reverse tropes. Okay, let's talk about those strategies for how to deal with magic's impact on your government. So you can straight up have magical rulers, right? I mean, that's the simplest one. Tolkien did it very effectively with his elves. Brandon Sanderson did it with his Mistborn. I did it. My dukes and my emperor all have access to Dusang, which is my second most powerful form of magic. Then, if you don't want to have a mage rulership, you can employ the secret society trope. So you can have it so that if my cat is in shot, I'm sorry. So that your mages are a self-governing body of mages, and what they do is they control themselves and they swear oaths to stay away from power. And this you can see employed in the Dresden Files, and Catherine Kerr uses it in her Devery novels. Then you can employ it's forbidden, kill them while they're young strategy. Now, I actually use this as well. My highest form of magic is called Sang Sorcelry. It's a blood magic, and I have that as forbidden, to use it as a death sentence. So this is effective if you want to have specific forms of magic outlawed, or if you want to have a story where somebody gaining magic is the focus area of the story. The last strategy you can employ is to bind the mages with oaths or with physical effects. So this is employed in literature by Trudy Canavan in the Black Magician series, where if you show magical talent, you become a member of the Mages Guild, and you swear to obey the king. And the Mage Guild itself is a self-governing body that ensures obedience to these oaths. And in 2012, with a group of friends, I built a live-action role-play world called Tales of Tiana, and we wanted to control magic in our human kingdom of Arnhelm. So what we did was we created an order called the Order of the Spirit Slayers, who were actually an order who controlled the use of magic. So they were not themselves mages, but they were like the magical police, right? Like the FBI for mages kind of principle. And if you're interested in seeing how we implemented that, you can check out the link to my World Anvil site for Tiana linked down below. So those are your 4 strategies. You can have a magical ruler, you can have a secretive society trope, you can have it be forbidden, or you can have it be public but policed. And that is my story around the impact of magic on government. If you're still here, if you enjoyed this content, please do hit that subscribe button. It really does help the channel grow. You can find links to my website and social media handles down below. And I will see you next week for another episode of Just in Time Worlds. Thank you for listening.